All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast as we are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to recap the Mets versus Pirates series, as well as all the latest news and rumors in New York Mets land. But before we get into that, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for new episodes of our show that are recorded live after every single series of games during the regular season. For those of you watching on listening, on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the chat right now, we love your comments, your questions, your concerns, all of that great stuff regarding the team at the current moment. If you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored, just being starred throughout the show. We'll try to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok for my co-host Frank's instant reactions following every single regular season game. Those are titled the Mets Frankly post game. Make sure for our audio listeners to follow us on all of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day. Also, make sure to give us a 5-star review. That would be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, let's get into episode number 135. Now, it is just me. There's no Frank. There's no Andrew. So you might as well refill today's panel because the first known level of insanity is talking to yourself. So to prevent that, let's bring in some special guests. This duo's been on our show before. I've been on their show before regarding the New York Rangers and somehow have not gotten them demonetized yet. Please help us welcome back Evan and Matt from the Mets Central podcast. Guys, great to have you back on here. I think you've been on a few breaking news streams. I think you've been on some scheduled podcast episodes, but great to have you guys back and good to be talking about a team that's has a little bit more hope than that team that stinks on ice, literally. So great to have you guys back. Evan, I'll swing it to you first.
No, yeah, thanks for having us back on. I think the last one was the Griffin Canning show, which ended up resulting in all three of us apologizing in the next show that we did about the Griffin Canning signing. But if you're watching, by the way, on our end, leave a like as well and all that stuff. But yeah, better to talk about this than the crap that we talked about on the ice. We won't have to demonetize you because we don't have to, say that we want to slingshot Mika Zibanejad off the Whitestone on this podcast. We get to at least talk about, there's another name maybe that we could throw up there that's a coach here, but that's neither here nor there. At least they're winning baseball games. At least they are on track to have a good season, so we don't have to get too hectic in that regard.
Yeah. Matt, you're also here. I know that you attend a lot of these games, see them live, and get to experience it, which Citi Field's a huge friendly. We actually were on at a game, all three of us together. I'm usually just not able to get down there that occasionally. But how are you doing?
I'm all right. I definitely agree with you guys. It's definitely a lot better to talk about this team than that certain team that plays at Madison Square Garden and charges an absurd amount for each ticket that you have to pay for. At least with Citi Field, sure, the prices have gone up a little bit, but at least you're going there to watch, winning baseball, and you're actually going there to watch good players and superstar players play. Now, listen, I get, maybe the way the Mets have been winning hasn't been pretty, and, there's definitely a lot to discuss about that on this episode, but yeah, obviously it's good to be on. Obviously, like Evan said, the last time we were on here was talking about Griffin Canning, and we were talking about how bad of a signing that was. And, a couple months later, look how that's turned around. And Griffin Canning's actually been one of the better pitchers on this Mets pitching staff. So all hail David Stearns, the man in the seats at the end. We love him. We adore him. And yeah, let's get into this.
Yeah, obviously there's plenty to talk about because, again, even though the Mets are at the top of this division, there's still a lot of things that do need to be figured out. And a lot of those are going to be discussed today, of course, with some guys who have been kind of struggling in their positions, which has definitely put them in a close call type of situation, especially in this Pirates series, which I think we all can agree, even though they did take it 2 out of 3, was very underwhelming. Especially with the quality of opponent that they played, the quality of play that was on display. It just was not what you expect a team like this, who's expected to be in contention, to play like that and kind of like a lot of people in the hockey community like to say, playing down to competition, as to where, like, we know that they're better than this team by many different margins, and for some reason they just kind of are stooping to their level for some reason. And I think this series was not obviously an identity of what this team is. But we were still seeing a lot of the same problems. We've seen issues with runners in scoring position. We've seen some defensive miscues, which we will get into later on with a certain someone, as well as the other defensive positioning there. But there have been a lot of mistakes that continue to be made. Doesn't seem like they have been solved just yet. It is still early, of course, 162 games that are being played. But I will tell you right now, you play like this, those flaws are going to start to show. They're going to start to bleed through eventually. If there's anything you guys want to add, just before I recap this, and I'll take a big swig of this water, because we all know how much I got to go. Yeah,
your gasoline tank there. But yeah, it's just like a lot of the same things that we were saying in 2022. Even like, that's really where it is concerning. And when you look at the fact that they got outscored by this Pirates team throughout the entirety of this series, that's something that's very alarming, considering this offense has the names that it does, and we still are waiting for them to hit with runners at scoring position. And, you said it last podcast, I believe, and we also talk about it in our group chat, where it's just like, every single time after these series, we're saying, if this gets going, at some point you're just if team, and at some point this is just who you are if you're not going to hit with runners at scoring position. And to stoop to the level of the Pittsburgh Pirates and even the level of Colorado Rockies with runners at scoring position, and we are now in the middle of May still waiting for things to change, that's very concerning. And it's not like there's a lot of injuries to the lineup. And then on top of that, I'll get into my thoughts with the final game in terms of the way Mendoza went about that game, which I was not a fan of, which I've not been a fan of a lot of the things that he's done lately. But you know what? It's also hard to blame him when this offense at the end of the day is as anemic as it is. I mean, that's the same thing we say about the pitching. It's hard to blame when there are a few blips here and there with the bullpen, or Clay Holmes yesterday, who had a little bit of a shaky start. It's hard to sit here and blame any of that stuff when these players have to perform at the end of the day, and you're just not getting it from the guys at all with runners at scoring position. We've seen Pete Alonso regress a little bit back to the mean, and Lindor, I mean, heaven forbid he has one off series. Heaven forbid that happens. It's like this offense just no-shows entirely.
Yeah. Obviously, with him being the catalyst from the top of the lineup, we all know that they play through him. The leader that he is. We had an off day for Juan Soto that came out of nowhere. I don't know why that was a thing. I did not get that whatsoever. But my co-host Frank was talking about it yesterday. He said, with Bailey Falter having the reverse splits against each platoon, they had pretty much every right-handed batter possible in there, and they didn't put in Soto. You had no McNeil or Beatty, who knows if that's going to be a world beater situation. But again, it's more of just the fact that final game. I don't want to say it was a punt game, but it sure looked like it. It sure looked like they were pulling out all the stops for a punt game. I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt because of how bad the offense has just been overall, and it's been dragging this team down from being a lot better. But it's just the fact that we're seeing guys like Marte be just bumped up to the cleanup spot when there's just like one person who's out. Like they just can't help themselves in that way. Jose Azocar batting for himself with the bases loaded last night in the fourth.
Which told me that was a punt game. It's like when Jose Azocar went up there with the bases loaded in the fourth inning, that told me everything I need to know. That one, they weren't winning the game. Two, Mendoza did not care and was punting the game. Because you have three left-handed bats and they're bringing the righty in. Why are you not going to your bench there? Especially when Jeff McNeil ended up pinch hitting for him the next inning.
Yeah.
So it's like, why not just go to him if you're going to put McNeil in the game anyway?
And they do treat McNeil as this, super utility man, which he's not. But again, it's he was playing right field or whatever. You can move him to left field, move, I don't know, Nimmo to right or whatever in that way if you're trying to avoid Soto playing or whatever. Because, as we all know, your $800 million investment should be sitting on the bench and getting, rest days in the middle of May. But yeah, there's a lot of questionable things that I have seen, but I think it's just the main catalyst of, on top of everything, has just been, the offense just does not seem like it's in somewhat of a groove. It doesn't look efficient at all, and they just look completely starved, no matter if they have some kind of blow up, explosion of an inning in the later innings, or they beat it. It just doesn't look consistent. It looks like a completely different team every single inning offensively, and I'm not expecting them to score every single opportunity, but these types of situations with the bases loaded, I mean, come on, this is a Pirates team that's not very good, and you can't be wasting these opportunities in that sense just because I don't know if it's the pressure of high leverage situations or not, which this team seems to do it late in these games. But for some reason, it's just this offense throughout this entire series, it looked like an offense that would get outscored by the Pittsburgh Pirates. They ended up getting outscored by the Pittsburgh Pirates. And even though that is skewered more by that last game of the series, I mean, these types of performances they put up, that should not be acceptable. And the Mets, I think they're 22 overall right now in OPS with runners in scoring position. I think they're even lower in batting average. It just continues to be the exact same things. I mean, Matt, if you want to tag anything along there before I get into the recap, but it's just the same stagnant stuff that we're continuing to see. And it just doesn't seem like it's going to change whatsoever, no matter if they're playing a good team or not.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately for me, I recall when we did our last podcast, me and Evan, and ultimately when we do our series predictions at the end of each episode, I said that they would take 2 out of 1. The only difference is I said that they would lose the first game just because I thought Paul Skeens was going to shut them down, and then they would take advantage of guys like Mitch Keller and Bailey Falter. But that was the total opposite, because really the weird thing was, I would say, even though the offense was not great for the whole series, probably the best offensive game, and not just in terms of runs, but in terms of ABs, was against Paul Skeens, which was a total shock to me. And then the thing, like we typically see with this Mets offense, whenever they face good pitchers, whether that be guys like Framber Valdez or during the Diamondback series when they had chances against, Corbin Burns and Zach Gallen, because they had opportunities to really, step on the neck of Paul Skeens and get him out of that game early. They had multiple opportunities with guys in scoring position. I believe they had an opportunity with bases loaded, but correct me if I'm wrong. And again, they let Paul Skeens off the hook. Now, ultimately, they were able to do enough and win that game. There of course was some shaky moments in that game as well. You bring it down to the bottom of the ninth, or the top of the ninth, excuse me, where they just had a couple of huge defensive misplays. You obviously had the Jose Butto attempt to pick off at second base, which we'll get into that. That made no sense, and that pissed me off totally, because there was just no reason to do that. That second game, like, okay, fine, like you face Mitch Keller, who isn't a bad pitcher, but a guy like Mitch Keller, that's someone that this offense should be beating up on. And they got to him early. They scored the 1 run in the first inning, courtesy of Brandon Nimmo with that RBI double into the left field gap. You had, Soto before that, getting on base with a single and stealing a base to get a run in scoring position. But then pretty much after that, you had nothing up until, Brett Beatty comes up in the 8th inning, I believe. And, he hits a solo home run to put the Mets up 2-1. And, they ultimately win that game. There was definitely some shakiness out of the bullpen. Reed Garrett obviously walking 2 guys, getting out of that jam, thankfully. And then, Diaz was shaky out of the bullpen as well, the 9th inning. But thankfully, he was able to close out that game. And then that final game, it's just, again, like you said, even though Mendoza maybe doesn't want to admit it's a punt game, it pretty much looked like a punt game, like you guys said. I mean, there was no reason to sit Juan Soto in that type of game. I get it's early. Listen, I get guys aren't always going to play a full 162, but especially when you have the off day today, that made no sense to sit Juan Soto. And then again, you had twice in the game yesterday, you had base lower opportunities. They couldn't come away with anything. And, and this is also something we talk about when, the pitching isn't necessarily, great or at sharpest. This team ends up losing games just because, they can't come across and get that big hit to put up runs. And again, listen, like Evan talked about this on the post game show yesterday, and I commented, I'm like, even though Clay Holmes definitely wasn't as shakiest, and he definitely did get screwed by the umpire in the second or third inning, I believe, with the 2-run home run he gave up. Yeah. But still, I can't blame Clay Holmes for that game because, okay, sure, he wasn't his sharpest, but he went out there, he gave you 6 innings, and he gives up only 4 runs. But still, the caliber of this Mets offense, you expect them to go out and score more than 4 runs against this Pittsburgh Pirates team. And listen, even without Juan Soto in that game, like, I get that the lineup technically wasn't pretty, but still, when you have Lindor, when you have Pete, when you have Vientos, when you have Nimmo, and guys like that, you should still be able to outscore a Pittsburgh Pirates team and win a game, even if Juan Soto's not in the lineup. So, to me, listen, you're not going to win every game against a bad team, and I'm not necessarily unhappy that they didn't sweep this series. Obviously, I would have liked them to sweep this series. It's just the manner of how they lost this game, and the fact that it's something similar to, how we've seen them lose close games earlier on in the season so far, and, games like last year as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I constantly get criticism about, either if the team wins or not. I mean, we go through the same thing what goes on with the Rangers, obviously. If they win or lose, it's, the end of result is happy or sad. It's a very non-complex thing. But for me, it's all about the quality of the win. And the quality of these wins, they just weren't good. Like, it just was not fun to watch. It was not, a fluent team that is apparently in first place and has one of the best records in all of baseball. And I hate to say that as, full on honesty here, but it's like, I'm telling you that you can't play like that and expect me to not raise concerns there. I'm not here to just complain. I'm telling you, this is exactly how they were playing, and it was not great. Because the difference between this and, a lot of these excuses of, well, Paul Skeens is a good pitcher. That also can be true. Mitch Keller's a good pitcher. That also can be true. But you're also going to face that good type of caliber of pitching in the postseason. What's the difference? You're not going to be facing the Pittsburgh Pirates, who suck. So instead of taking 2 out of 3 in those situations against those good teams with good pitching, you might lose if you don't hit, because there's a possibility that your pitching isn't going to be as perfect every single time. And Matt, like you said, with that last game with Clay Holmes, obviously it wasn't the sharpest we've seen him. Velocity was down a little bit. But again, if you have 0 runs on the board, this is the same debate that I had last episode with the whole situation with Griffin Canning, where people were getting angry at Griffin Canning for giving up a tying home run to PCA. I mean, look at the scoreboard. Score more than 1 run, and then we can start complaining about that. I can start complaining about Reed Garrett walking in batters when the actual offense shows up and does something. Because there has to be, from some other end, they're going to have to pull the weight from both ends. Like, that's just going to have to be a way to do it. Or this entire winning and 12 games over 500 in this first place, that's not going to last long if you keep playing like this and just folding with runners in scoring position, defensive miscues. I mean, this 1-run game stuff is just not going to work. It's not going to work. They're like, I don't know, 9 and 8 in 1-run games. Like, that's very rough. That shows you that you're not only has your pitching been good, but that also just shows you that your offense has continued to fall short. Like, that can't happen, especially with an offense that is being paid to do so much in this position. It's just, I really get so aggravated watching this offense just constantly underperform the way that they are. And of course, there is possibilities as to why. We all know what I'm pointing to here, but we don't have time for that. We'll eventually get to that discussion on this show. That's not going to be today, because we need a decent enough sample size to, cut that guy's head off. But the only thing that I have with this is the fact that none of this continues to have any improvement, and it constantly seems to be a thing from 1 through 9. This continues to be a struggle from 1 through 9. Some may be good at it from others. Maybe it's like Alonso and Lindor, a little bit of Luis Torrens, who's been good situationally, who was not good situationally last night. He struck out with the bases loaded. I mean, a 4-0 loss if you want to put that on Clay Holmes, we can go to the other side here is where you had the bases loaded twice in that game and you didn't come through. So again, to my math serves correctly, a home run with the bases loaded is 4 runs. So it would be a tie game where you could drive in multiple runs in that situation. Like, the offense has got to show up.
Yeah, and that's it. Again, it's just like the same conversations. Like I said before, it's the same stuff we were saying in 2022. And it was great. They won 101 games, but we saw what happened by the end. And I'm really trying to understand, because I have people that are telling me that it's like, well, it's because this offense is so home run or bust. I don't see that at all. I just see a team that is terrible with situational hitting. It's really just that simple to me. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, because people will tell you, oh, well, don't be too critical. They still won the series. Listen, like, we get it. This team isn't going to sweep every bad team. The Dodgers lose games to the Marlins. The Dodgers lose games to the Rockies, and the Rockies have single-digit wins still, and we are in May. But the fact of the matter is, when we are having the same conversations after every single series, that's when it becomes a problem, because
when it starts to add up.
Because the Dodgers, you know what they do, even if they lose to the Rockies, the rest of those games, they are absolutely annihilating them. And you don't have to have those conversations because of that, because it is baseball. You're going to lose to bad teams. But when it's this much that we're having this conversation of them not hitting situationally, that just tells you have a problem here. And the fact that it's in every single series is the concern.
The fact that there's a lot of 1-run losses, that the game was in your hands so many times. Like, so many times, what did I say? Like 9 1-run losses or whatever, or maybe some 2-run losses as well, where they had multiple guys on base. They can't cash them in. That stuff adds up. And that is going to come back to bite you. And again, not every single time you're going to be playing a Pittsburgh Pirate team that stinks. All right, so before I get into this full-on series rundown, where I waste all of my breath and all of my energy, let's get into the chat a little bit. Daniel coming in here as well. We have the other Daniel, who is a Raiders fan. Nice team, of course. Saying that Pittsburgh series was pathetic. Yep, we will get into it, of course. Quality over quantity, even though they ended up taking 2 out of 3, like we said. Stanley in here, Darren Rivera as well. Rosie K is in the chat. We have Victor, I think, coming over from your channel as well. Plenty of you guys in the chat right now, and we will get into more of this discussion. But I obviously want to get into the full-on rundown of this series of what happened. For those of you who don't know what we are talking about here in the beginning. So here is your full-on rundown of this series. Now, as for Game 1, David Peterson, the lovely results man, would make his start for the series opener, work in and out of trouble all night. He'd surrender a solo home run to Isaiah Kiner-Falefa in the second, and he'd pitch into the 7th inning. He'd walk the leadoff hitter, and he'd be pulled for Jose Butto. More on Butto later. And he would allow Peterson's base runner to score on an RBI force out by Brian Reynolds following a stolen base and a disengagement violation to advance to third, but he would limit the damage to close the book on Peterson. 6+ innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts on an even 100 pitches. The Mets were down 1-0 in the 4th. Brandon Nimmo would lead off the inning with a double, and Jeff McNeil would drive him in on a double of his own to tie the game up at 1. Down 2-1 in the 7th. Pinch hitter Tyrone Taylor would lead off the inning with a hit by pitch. Luis Angel Acuna would follow it up with an infield single that would send Taylor to third. Juan Soto would drive in the tying run on an RBI groundout, advancing Acuna to second. And Pete Alonso would drive in the lead run on the back of Acuna's ridiculous speed. After a ground ball would deflect off of shortstop Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, IKF would throw home, and Acuna would break with Acuna breaking for the plate. And he'd get onto the tag to put the Mets in front 3-2. Dednell Nunez would toss a 1-2-3 eighth inning with help from a leaping catch at the left field wall by Brandon Nimmo. But in the ninth, Huskar Brazaban would attempt to get the save and get plagued by the defense after a leadoff single to Mets spring training legend Alexander Canario. Francisco Lindor would commit a fielding error to make it 2 on, nobody out. Hunter Davis would move the runners over on a sacrifice bunt, and the tying run would eventually come in on a ground ball to third base that would be bobbled by Luis Angel Acuna, with his throw to first not in time, but the Mets would prevent further damage, getting the struggling Brian Reynolds to ground into a double play to keep the game tied at 3. With 1 out in the last of the ninth, Francisco Lindor would reach on a fielding error by IKF. Juan Soto would follow that up with a single. Lindor would go first to third, and Pete Alonso would hit a sacrifice fly to right field. Lindor would come in to score, and the Mets would walk off the Pirates in Game 1, 4-3. Game 2, Kodai Senga would get his 8th start of the year and continue his dominant start to the season. He'd run into some trouble in the 6th, allowing a 2-out single and a double that would deflect off of Mark Vientos' glove at third to make it 2nd and 3rd. Reed Garrett would come on and issue back-to-back walks with the run being charged to Senga, but the inning would finally come to a close to close the book on Senga. 5 2/3 innings pitched, 6 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts on 102 pitches. The Mets would open the scoring in the first inning after a Juan Soto 1-out single and stolen base. Brandon Nimmo would drive him in on an RBI double to make it 1-0. Fast forward to the 7th, Max Kranick would toss a 1-2-3 inning with a strikeout, and Brett Beatty would remain hot, homering to the opposite field to put the Mets in front 2-1. Ryan Stanek would post a scoreless 8th with 2 strikeouts, and Edwin Diaz would get the 9th, struggle a bit with a 1-out walk. Francisco Lindor would commit a throwing error to put runners at the corners with 1 out. IKF would steal second without a throw, but Diaz would strike out Brian Reynolds and get Joey Bart to ground out as the Mets would hold on in Game 2 to take the series 2-1. And in Game 3, Clay Holmes would make the start against his former team where it all began, and he'd struggle a bit through 6 innings of work, giving up a pair of 2-run home runs in the 2nd and the 5th inning. He'd end his night with 7 hits, 4 earned runs, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts on 90 pitches. Genesis Cabrera would toss 2 scoreless innings in the 7th and 8th with 4 strikeouts in total. Danel Nunez would toss a 1-2-3 ninth on 13 pitches. As for the offense, a full-on goose egg. As we said, the Mets would have the bases loaded in the 1st and 4th inning in this game and fail to score. Pirates starter Bailey Falter would walk 5 batters across 3 2/3 innings pitched, and the Mets would bail him out every single time, getting shut out in the series finale in the pouring rain as well, 4-0. The Mets are now 28-16 on the season, winning 4 games from their 6-game homestand, and currently holding a 2.5 game lead on the Phillies for first place in the National League East. So lots to obviously break down from this game. It was just not a well-played series against a team that the Mets should be besting. At least for 2 out of 3, they should have an offensive explosion, at least against their bullpen or something. It just continued to be as stagnant, like we said. It just was not a series that looked like, who was the dominant team. It looked like it was just both of these teams were playing at the same level, playing down to their opponents. If there's any other takeaways, obviously we went into a few things as well. But Matt, I'll bring it over to you. It just wasn't good. It was not a good series for them. Besides them winning 2 out of 3, just not underwhelming, very underwhelming, lackluster, as we have on the stream on the screen here.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's a lot of the same things that like we've been saying over the last, couple series. And I mean, pretty much, if we're going to be honest, the whole season where it's the same problem, can't score whenever you have guys and runners in scoring position. You're over relying way too much on the starting pitching and the bullpen. And this is something, that me and Evan, we've talked about a ton on our on our channel when we do our podcast, and it's the thing of over relying too much on the pitching and the bullpen. And listen, I get that the pitching for the Mets has been just superb so far. I mean, just the amount of surprises there's been out of guys like Clay Holmes, Griffin Canning so far this year, and even multiple guys out of the bullpen like Reed Garrett. He's really turned the corner this year. Max Kranick, he comes out of nowhere in spring training and really cements a spot. Even like a guy like Huascar Brazaban, who we pretty much didn't have a lot of hope for going to this year, and he really didn't have a great spring training, but he came up because of an injury to Paul Blackburn on the opening series, and he's pretty much cemented his spot in the bullpen. And again, this is something, like I said, like we talked about with Clay Holmes. Like, sure, maybe Clay Holmes was the sharpest, but at the end of the day, when the offense can't contribute any runs against the Pirates team, and Holmes only gives us 4 runs, it's like, okay, sure, well, he wasn't the sharpest, but at the end of the day, put up runs against this Pittsburgh Pirates team. The same thing like Reed Garrett in the second game when he comes out of that bullpen. Now, listen, I didn't love the fact that when it's bases loaded and Reed Garrett is coming out of the game, or is coming into the game out of the bullpen, and he's walking in a run because he's throwing 4 straight balls out of the zone, and then the next batter comes up and he has him in an 0-2 count and ends up losing him by throwing 4 straight balls out of the zone and walking in the tying run. It's like, yeah, I don't love that, but again, it's like what you said. I can't blame these pitchers when, again, the offense isn't doing anything. And like I said, this is something that I've talked about with Evan a ton. It's like, you cannot, like, sure, like, you don't love the fact that some of these guys, sometimes they come out of the bullpen and they don't have their sharpest stuff, but a ton of these guys so far, whenever they've come in tough jams, they've gotten out of a bunch of jams and bailed this offense out a bunch of times. And again, it's baseball. It's a long season. It's 162 games. None of these guys are ever going to be perfect. There are games where, you're going to have some shakiness out of the bullpen. And still, if the Mets offense is at least anywhere semi, decent to anywhere competent, those walks per se, they don't matter. Clay Holmes giving you 4 runs on two 2-run home runs, those don't matter. But again, and it's something that this is going to have to turn around before, like you said, Carson, when you end up playing those better teams like the Dodgers, like we saw last year in the NLCS, where, sure, your pitching might be, semi good for the start of the games, but then once you get later into those games where the Dodgers offense starts to unload and you're over here, stranding the base loaded 2 to 3 times in the game, you're going to end up losing those games. And what do you know? The Mets ended up losing that series in 6 because of that same reason. So it's something that has to, turn around. And I know we've been saying, if this happens, but this is again, and it's something that I brought up. This is again why you have a trade deadline, and the one difference, because I know there's a lot of parallels between the Mets and the Rangers, obviously, because we both cheer for those teams. But the one difference why, and I'm not totally like down on the Mets per se, and like because and like being down that they're not playing the best of baseball, because I mean the big difference for me is with the Rangers, I don't trust the guy, and we don't trust the guy making those roster decisions. At least with the Mets and Stearns, I can at least say, okay, maybe the team isn't playing the best brand of baseball as of right now, but I trust the guy to go out there come trade deadline time, identify the pieces needed to improve the roster, and then go get those players. As per se, the Mets in 2022, when you have Billy Epler basically punting the trade deadline and getting guys like Michael Givens, Darren Ruff, Tyler Naquin, Daniel Vogelback, guys like that, and then, basically just throwing the season out of the way because they didn't want to be aggressive. At least here, I have a guy that, okay, and I'm sure we're going to talk about guys that maybe they could go out there and trade for. Obviously, there were the Luis Robert rumors over the last week, but
yeah,
this is something that it needs to be approved upon.
Evan, if you want to add.
Yeah, it's just like, even on top of the offense, I don't understand what happened to this team's defense from last season. I mean, this team last year, it felt like, was doing every single thing right defensively. And I know they lost some guys like Iglesias and Bader who were good in the field, but I just don't understand, what happened to a team that was so fundamentally sound last year defensively, to where it feels like every single time in crucial moments, these guys are making mistakes. I mean, the ball going through Vientos' glove. And I know that we talked about ad nauseum during the offseason how we didn't want to put Vientos in a spot where he's the DH because the guy's 25 years old. Like, let him be a third baseman. But I'm starting to think the people that were pointing that out are actually have a point that he should just be a DH, because I can't stand the fact that every single time he's out there and every time a ball's hit to third base, I don't have confidence that he's going to make the play. I mean, even the routine ones, and you have the ball going through his glove, one of them hitting off of his chest in that one game. It's just not good enough compared to what they were getting last year. And when Brett Beatty, and I can't even believe I'm saying it, but when Brett Beatty's playing a better third base right now, it's starting to bring a point where you might not have a choice but to have Brett Beatty play over at third base and make Vientos the DH until the trade deadline, when you can maybe improve in that area. So that's the other thing. And then obviously I got into what I haven't liked about Mendoza. And the thing that I'm trying to understand too with game number 3, if you were so keen on rest and all this other stuff with an off day, why not just put a 6th starter in that day and give Clay Holmes the extra day of rest compared to making him start on regular rest? Why not just put the 6th starter in if you're going to punt that game anyway? And I know they aren't going to flat out say that they were punting it or anything, but you might as well there, especially because it was a rainy day at the park, which, by the way, the umpire should have called that rain delay when Clay Holmes was struggling out there in the second, but that's neither here nor there. Why not just go the 6th starter? And then you have him pushing Genesis Cabrera a second inning, which worked out, but you let him get in a jam. Hefner's nowhere to be found, and the bullpen doesn't even warm up. So it's just like, I'm trying to understand some of these little details that were there last year from both the manager and this team defensively that are just missing right now this season. It just feels like it's disappeared overnight here.
Yeah, there's a lot of details as to why I don't understand why they continue to stay with something or they don't. I mean, obviously we'll get into Mark Vientos in a little bit because there are, some defensive alignments that I do want to talk about. But again, I think it pretty much, wraps up into, some of the little things that they need to start doing correctly. It's just, the fact of how against teams that you're not going to see going forward, against, better teams that you're going to play, like what you have coming up here with the Yankees and Red Sox and Dodgers, they're going to capitalize on those mistakes as compared to a Pittsburgh team who's even worse than you statistically this year with runners in scoring position. And I feel like, yes, the pitching has bailed them out as much, but it's not going to be there every single time. Like we have said, nobody is perfect in that way, but we're not saying we want them to be perfect. We want them to be efficient. And from some parts, they just have not been, and it continues to be a concern, and it is going to hold them back from being a lot better. It's not even just this team exceeding the expectations. It's more of just going to an expectation of a team that we know can play a winning formula of baseball. We've seen the Mets constantly lose games by 1 run, as to where they've had plenty of guys in runners in scoring position, and they continue to squander it. That's falling short, and that's the main reason as to even if they are 12 games under 500 right now, it still is leaving you thinking that there could be more, and they could be a lot better. And this is just simple criticism as to this team needs to play better than they did against a Pittsburgh Pirates team who's so bad, against teams that are coming up like the Yankees or the Dodgers, maybe even Boston as well, who is no slouch compared to a team like Pittsburgh. We know they're not fantastic, but they are a team that is competent enough of winning a decent amount of games. And Game for War saying that these Mets are one of the top 2 teams in payroll. They're not just a regular team. They have expectations, and they're playing underwhelmingly, letting a lot of easy wins become losses. That's basically how I would sum it up here. It's like they can be better. And these types of mistakes, if they continue, these easy games against the Pittsburgh Pirates that you let slip away, or these easy games against Minnesota that you let slip away, they're not going to be there. What's done is done. Like they need to find a way to find this consistency with runners in scoring position, because again, scoring more runs than the other team is not an excuse for this? Is it not an excuse for to just, well, let's forget about it and move on? This has been an issue so far all season. Since opening day, they have not been able to cash in with runners in scoring position. They've had constant defensive miscues. They've had to play in the margins like a low payroll team, such as how Milwaukee did it, or such as how Seattle does it, where they have to rely on the pitching so much. That should not be the expectation for a team that is just leaning on pitching, or for a team that has these types of expectations, for a team that has Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso all in a lineup.
And even though they have the money he is,
and Brandon Nimmo. Yeah, and Brandon Nimmo making a bunch of money. Marte, we know the situation with him, but making plenty of amounts of that for just not even giving us the value that is even close to what we expected from the beginning. I mean, what else do we need? I mean, do we have to, again, I can't sit here and give sympathy for these guys who are winning when they're getting paid millions of dollars to produce and they're not producing.
It's the same.
And again, it's the same thing.
I was just
no. It's just like comments like these. It's like it's a bloodbath. If the Met, I've been watching the Mets before. I'm glad that you've been alive before us. That's something that we can't control. Do you know what the Mets can control? Hitting with runners in scoring position.
Yeah.
We're not saying that this team is bad. We are actually saying the exact opposite. What we are saying is this team can be better because we know they can be better.
Yeah, and
we know they can be better than this.
And this is something that, we've experienced a lot, especially, like this type of comment per se. This is something that we went through with the Rangers in 23-24, where, listen, we might have criticized that team a lot. And I get that team won the President's Trophy. And never did we say that team was bad. The one thing that we were always complaining about, though, was that, okay, they're a good team, but there's so much room to grow into a great team. And that gap between good and great team is what separates you from being a true contender for a championship. And then, like what we saw when they faced a team like Florida, who was that great team, they got ran off the ice and out of that building. And this is the same thing we're saying with the Mets. The Mets are a very good team right now, but there is a little gap right there in terms of their play style and maybe overall, talent in terms of their depth that's leaving them from not being and not taking that next step to being a great team to where, we can see them being on the level as a team like the LA Dodgers per se. And that's all we're saying. Like, we're not saying the Mets are a bad team, but there is sort of a gap, and they need to shrink that gap in order to become that true contender that we all know that they can be.
And that's exactly.
I mean, we're not brutally insulting. Like, again, are we brutally insulting them right now? We're not.
No.
We're breaking things down of things that we don't like to see, and that's literally the thing. It gets constantly misconstrued in here. We're gonna be honest with you. This is the tagline for my show, at least. I don't know if you guys say it a little bit more freely there. We're brutally honest here. There's something we don't like, whether it's good or bad. We're gonna tell you here, and if you don't like it, again, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. This is the things that we're seeing. We're calling it like it is. Evan, I interrupted you. It's all yours.
No, you're good. I was just going to bring up the exact point Matt did, and it's the same conversations that we had with the Rangers, with the people ignoring the 5-on-5 issues. It's the same conversations we had in 2022. Like I've said now for the third time this episode, in 2022, everyone kept saying, but the record. And the fans like us were pointing out, situational hitting is still a problem. They are too reliant on one guy in the offense. It's a little too similar for that, and they're capable of more. They are giving money to all of these guys, to Juan Soto. They are giving money to Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor. They could be better, and they will be better at some point, but this is the same trouble that they had last year against the Dodgers, which is the problem here. And again, the fundamentals is what's really concerning me of all things, because this team, again, was so fundamentally sound last year. And I didn't even touch on Jose Azocar, who fell asleep at first base again. It's like, what are we doing here? It's just, I don't understand it at all. And
can happen.
The manager falling asleep a little bit at the wheel every now and then too. just not being aware of certain situations. It just, again, what is going on? Jose Butto making that mistake. That's the problem here. And again, we're not saying it will not get better.
We're saying that it can get better because they have the talent to do so. But again, as you know, even if you want to bring in more of the Rangers references, I mean, the talent don't mean anything. You know, like the talent doesn't mean anything. You got to play the right way. And yes, we've beaten the Phillies and the Blue Jays, but for all of those losses, to look at it half empty here, like we've been saying, they've all been like by 1 run, 2 runs, where they've had opportunities to be better. That's what we mean.
And I don't know what people want.
They need to be better.
Pitching. Sorry to cut you off there, but we've
the pitching's been great. Pitching's been great, but it's like you can't just rely on one department of the team to carry you through the rocks. It just can't happen. It just can't happen where you're just sitting here waiting for something to just come your way. And again, it's more of just the entire specifics of the context in front of us. Even just yesterday, if you want to talk about that specifically, Bailey Falter was not pitching a good game at all. He wasn't pitching well. He gave up, I don't know, it was like 9 base runners in three innings, and the Mets still couldn't do anything.
It's exactly what Game for War is commenting right now. Do you have the expectations of this team being a World Series champion? Because again, like if we're holding this team to the standard of racking up regular season wins, then great. I mean, they're playing good enough baseball to rack up regular season wins like that. That's awesome. But I think the standard here should be a lot higher, considering they are paying they're giving the biggest contract in baseball to a player. And considering this team was in the National League Championship Series last year, I would think that the expectations are a little higher here. If this was last year and this team came out of the gate the way they are, I think all of us would be pumped up because it was an evaluation year. But now the bar should be raised here. Like we're past the last year. We're past OMG. We're past Grimace. We're past all this stuff. The expectation should be, let's watch a team that plays good baseball fundamentally, offensively, and from the pitching side. And again, it is a 162 game season. It is not going to be perfect the entire way through. But the fact that we are sitting here in the middle of May, and after every series, we're saying they need to be better with runners at scoring position. They need to be better with runners at scoring position. They need to be better with runners at scoring position. There's only so many times we could say that before it's who they are. And we are getting to the point where if this keeps up and we enter June, I'm just going to sit here and say that's who they are. And they're going to have to address it come the deadline. And Stearns is a guy I trust to address it. But there's just a lot of things right now that need to be improved upon for this team to get to that extra level. And we're not saying it can't happen. We wouldn't be talking about it if we didn't think it could happen, because it would be a moot point. If this was 2023 where there was no expectations by the end, we wouldn't be wasting our breath on it. But we're talking about it because we expect this team to be holding a trophy at the end of the year. Yeah.
That's what we want. I mean, if we're just saying, well, just score more runs than the other team and I'll be happy. If you want to sweat out 162 games where you don't know if the offense is going to show up every single night, that's an issue. Sometimes you have bad games, but it's every single night. Every single night, this team is leaving something on the table. They are staring at pitches in the strike zone. Never swing 3-1, which is regularly a hitter's count. Chasing things in the other batter's box. You guys are seeing that, right? It's not like, oh, well, look at the scoreboard. Listen, if this is the argument that we're going to go to, why don't we just walk up to the Dodgers dugout later? Later next week or whatever?
Yeah, later next week.
When they play them, let's walk up to the Dodgers dugout and say, hey, we're going to win-loss record you to death. That's going to work. That's totally going to work.
I just want to jump in before I let you go, Matt, that the thing that drives me insane the most right now with just the lineup construction thing is how come I'm just trying to understand why Starry Marte does not play for weeks on end. Pretty much got the entire week off. And then it's like, yeah, go hit in the 5 hole. It's just like, why? Why are you forcing this to be a thing? And he's got to go once Jesse Winker's healthy. And if Brett Beatty's going to continue to perform like this, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to do the Robinson Cano thing with Marte, because you cannot.
We already talked about this on here. It's just
yeah, I mean, we talk about this every episode, that they treat the DH position like it's a joke, but it has to happen, because you are effectively wasting $20 million on a guy that at most steals bases, and he doesn't even do that anymore. Like, he can't even play a full game in the field. They had to pull him like it was spring training. But it's like, go hit 4th or 5th, King. Go out there, Pookie, and slay.
Slay.
Yeah, exactly. With those washboard abs, King.
Sitting on that elephant trunk, baby.
Cook up that pulled pork. No, but it's also something like you said, Carson, and like I said, you brought this up multiple times on your podcast, or even when we're talking amongst ourselves in our group chat. But it's even the point when this offense has games where they explode for multiple runs. I mean, in the series against the Marlins back at Citi Field, where in the second game they put up 10 runs. In the first game of the Diamondbacks series at home, they put up 7 runs. I believe they put up 7 or 6 runs against the Cardinals in the series in St. Louis, and we can't even get excited over that, because we've seen that this team is unable to carry over that offensive explosion throughout multiple games, because then it's like, okay, you put up 7 runs in those games, but then you move over to the next game and it's like they're barely scratching out 2 runs across 5-6 hits. And again, it's the same issue where, okay, sure, they maybe get tons of guys on base, but they can't get that big hit to then fully, explode and and get those runs that ultimately change the dynamic of the game to put them in front. And again, this is something where, like you said, it's the guy that we won't talk about, obviously, and this is a constant that we've seen throughout his 3-4 years that he's been here so far in 2022. It's this bipolar offense. When everyone clicks, the offense looks great because everyone's hitting for power, they're getting on base. But then there's points like this where nobody's hitting, your all-star players aren't hitting, your depth players aren't hitting, and you're gonna have games like this against Bailey Falter, where sure, even though he's not pitching a great game, he could still get around this lineup, and the Mets ultimately put up no runs. It's something that's got to be fixed.
No, I mean, eventually they're going to have to figure something out. Again, having a new lineup every single day, I've said this so many times, it just doesn't help, in my opinion. Like, if you're going to do a few platoons, whatever, but if you're just going to keep on switching things in and out like this, I don't see that as something that guys who can get into a rhythm. And it seems like the only guys that can get into a rhythm are the top 3, and that top 3 has been the same all year. So again, I don't know. I don't know if that's just being, glass half full or glass half empty, but it's just the fact that, having a different lineup every time, everyone needs to play, everyone needs rest, like it's fine if you want to do that, but it has to be established a little bit more as to a batting order where these guys can get into a rhythm, because you're facing a new pitcher every single day. If you say that they score 13 runs or they scored 19 runs like they did in DC in that series finale like a few weeks ago, is it going to carry over to the next game? No, you're going to face a different pitcher. You're not going to have any sort of rhythm because you have a brand new lineup and everything. And, these guys have to play all these certain different positions, and we'll get into a certain position at third base that is a discussion that I feel like needs to be had, especially with somebody like Brett Beatty hitting recently since he came back from AAA, and then also things like that. But some really good comments in the chat.
Two Cats comment that you starred was great.
Yeah, Two Cats comment's really good. You're right. Am I saying that right? I don't know. But he's saying right on paper. Dave. Yeah. On paper, we should be expecting at least a World Series appearance. The team can be better with focus on fundies, but also the addition of
an arm or two.
The addition of another arm or two, and a center fielder, which again, those are things that can go up to David Stearns and what he does at the deadline. But again, it's more of just a coaching situation where it constantly seems to be an issue for everybody throughout this lineup. Two Cats saying this team is a lot better than a lot of teams. You probably see that, but they need to start showing it soon, which I'm not seeing. That's the thing. I'm just not seeing it.
And that's the point of this entire conversation. It's not to sit here and say we're not enjoying the wins. It's not to sit here and complain for the sake of complaining.
Yeah.
It's because we know they have this other gear. We just want to see it. Like, that's really all it is, because we're in May now and we're having way too similar conversations. And, you know, in April, go back to our episodes. I looked by it for so long where I was like, it's going to get going. You know, this offense is too good.
Yeah.
They're going to get going. But now when is it going to happen? And with your point with the lineup thing, we've been beating that drum on our show since like the middle of April, I would say, that they should try switching up the lineup. And it's becoming, and I hate to keep comparing things to hockey here, but when the Rangers relied on that one line last year, it's similar to this, where they're being too stubborn to change the top three. Try changing the top three. I've been advocating for so long. Try Vientos in the 2-hole, move Juan Soto down to the 3-hole, and get Alonso in the cleanup spot and just see what happens. It does not hurt to at least try something different if you're going to go out there and switch the depth around, because at the end of the day, the depth isn't getting it done. So why not try to shift these guys around, spread the love of the top three, and just see what happens? Like, at most, try it for a series. I'm not asking for the world here. I at least don't think I am. But just something different would be nice.
I think it's all just basically, we know what this team is capable of. And when we constantly hear, well, if this guy gets going and this guy okay, when's it going to happen? Because I mean, we're playing it game by game here, and we're still not seeing that. Because again, yes, Juan Soto, we know that eventually he will be Juan Soto and will be, you know, not what he has been these first month or two, or month and a half. As a Met, we know that he's capable of a lot more. That's the main reason as to why it is frustrating to watch that when the offense is just not performing up to what we expect them to do. And again, that the pitching staff, it may have some flaws in it, and it may be really, really good. But again, it's not going to be there every single time to bail you out. It seems like every single time when a starting pitcher on this team gives up 4 earned runs, or the pitching staff gives up 4 or more earned runs, it seems like this team can't manage to get any hitting done. Like it seems like if the starter does not keep you in a game in any sort of way, it's like it's so 0 to 100 with this offense, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. We know that it can be better than this. And that's the frustrating part about it. It's not us saying that we know that this team sucks and we think that this team's awful. No, we know this team is capable of it. And that's why we're continuing to point that out, so they can be better. And obviously we're not talking to them in the locker room and giving them a La Violette pep talk. But again, it's one of those, we're trying to put as many hockey references in here. Sorry. For those of you who are not hockey fans, I apologize. But it's just the fact that we know that this team can be better, and we want them to be better so bad because we know that they can take it into the next level if they are there. But I don't want to continue to say if. I don't want to be if team. I don't want to play if player, if coach, if this, if that. You got to start showing it. Eventually, teams like the Pirates, you got to show it against them. Again, that team in Atlanta that we have seen kind of take a drop off recently. Remember that year when they were so fantastic? They were playing awful teams, and they were beating the living crap out of them. The Mets should do that in one of the games of a 3-game series. Maybe have, be better situationally. We're not asking for them to be perfect. We're asking for it to be efficient, and it has not been efficient. I feel like we can do a film study of these at-bats that the Mets take with runners in scoring position, and it's constantly the inefficient swing decisions or lack thereof swing decisions that they constantly make. Like I said, staring at pitches in the zone with 2 strikes, swinging at pitches in the other batter's box, not swinging 3-0, constantly getting down 0-2. I mean, these types of situations are going to add up, And you're going to see goose eggs like that on the scoreboard if you continue to have habits like this.
And
it's just how it is.
And the frustrating thing is for me, like I've at least maybe seen it a couple times where they can be good in situational hitting, because if you recall back to the first game of the series, they go to the bottom of the ninth after those defensive mistakes, and Acuna strikes out to end that inning, but you have Lindor with a single up the middle. Sure, he goes off the bag and goes through Isaiah Kiner-Falefa's legs, but he gets on first base. You then have Juan Soto being patient up there, drives a ball into the right field gap, gets Lindor over to third base, and then you have Pete Alonso going up there. And listen, I get Alonso's has dropped off a little bit in terms of his production, but again, he went up there. He had a very good at bat, didn't look to overswing, got the count to 3-1 in his favor, and drove a ball out to deep right field and to be able to score Lindor to win that game. But it's just something like that we've been saying where we haven't seen it at a consistent rate, because there's plenty of times where we can jump to, and there was multiple times that Diamondback series at home where they had bases loaded or second and third late in the game, and again you have guys like a guy like Vientos per se, who Vientos has definitely been a lot better as of recently compared to the start of the season, but still Vientos, whenever there's guys on second and third or bases loaded, he has horrible plate discipline and a horrible plate approach when guys are in scoring position, because he'll take pitches, he'll then swing at a slider out of the zone in the other's batter's box, and then you see him, and then there's multiple times where it's like all they need to do is get a sacrifice fly to tie the game, and they're just again having a bad plate approach. So it's something where we know that they can do it. It's just now putting it together and now actually being able to do it over a consistent rate, as then just doing it once in a while, and then all the other times you strand runners on base and you end up losing those close games like we've seen a bunch so far throughout the season.
Even if they were 25% better with runners at scoring position, not even half better, 25% better, this conversation we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, most likely.
Wouldn't exist.
25% better.
They're very close. Again, like we've said, 1-run losses, plenty of them. Like they've had these opportunities. It's not like they're not getting any.
And
because we know that this offense is capable of giving them that opportunities, and they're still just squandering them constantly.
And
it's
I'll
just
say
the bare minimum.
I'll say this: after these 9 games, if they go on and still have a good record by the end of this, and they do well over the stretch of 9 games, I vow to shut up about it. Unless obviously things change, and then I'll, take a little victory lap that I was right. But either way, over these next 9 games, if it's similar and they still win, I will shut up about it. But these 9 games are going to battle test you and be measuring stick type games, because these are teams, one that you could see in the World Series, one that is going to be competitive in the AL, and a World Series contending team in the Dodgers. So
that took you out last year.
Yeah. Especially that series will tell me a lot. So these are measuring stick games. And you know what? If you want to say that we're having this conversation too early, fine. But in 9 games, if this continues, you're going to see the record drop. And we are going to be talking about the record being way worse than it is right now. And they're going to be closer to 500 than anything else. So again, maybe it is early, but we also want to point this out before these games come up to warn people this should not be a surprise if they continue to play baseball this way. It is not going to go well. If they start situationally hitting better, then we're having a different conversation. I think we're all thrilled, and then we're talking about this team in a different light. But we need to see it over these next 9 games. Yeah,
I'll jump through the roof.
We have to see it over these next 9 games.
I'll be light on my feet like Peter Pan. I'm telling you, I'll be ecstatic. I mean, if you see good situational hitting, you know that the team is good for those situations, obviously, because you're going to need those big hits in the postseason against good teams like that. And you can't be squandering those opportunities. Game for War talking about it's like a pitcher will walk 3 batters in a row. Vientos is swinging first pitch. That's the thing. You got a pitcher on the ropes. That's another instance. Like we're saying, we can point out so many of these, and everyone can testify to it that they've seen it happen many, many times. The Mets are it's just constantly this inefficient type of approach that just is not smart. It's all mental. It really is all mental. A lot of it is mental because, again, like we've said, we know they're capable of it. We know they're capable of doing it. We've seen them do it before.
I mean, we saw that last night. I get that. Listen, I get that we didn't love Jose Azocar being up there in the bases loaded opportunity, but you have a new pitcher coming to the game. Why are you swinging first pitch to try, to try and surprise him?
Dumb.
At least see a couple pitches and see what the new pitcher has to offer. Don't just go up there and swing first pitch, because right there, you just killed all the momentum right there. It's just dumb.
Yeah. Timely hitting, timely decision making, just awful. Terrible. It's terrible. It's going to come back to bite you. It will continue to bite you, because again, even with the Pirates being as bad as they are, let's not forget when they stranded the bases loaded in the second inning or the first inning yesterday. What happened right afterwards?
They scored.
Pirates scored. 2-run homer. Now again, was the umpire bad in that? Was Carlos Torres awful in that game? Absolutely. But when your offense is even worse, how do you even make that argument? It's like, oh, well, Mendoza's the issue. This is the issue. They're not hitting.
Yep.
Show up, offense. Where are you? Please show up. I'm begging you. Show up. Shut me up, please.
Yeah. And it sucks.
Jeez.
It sucks that we have to have this conversation, because believe me, I want nothing more than to come on these shows and pump the tires of this team like we were the first however many games into the season, where we were able to look by the issues because it was still early, but I just can't ignore facts. It really is just what it is. Like, I can't ignore the facts and the optics of it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's
and Game for War is
more
definitely
of this
right there.
Yeah, I think it's again, it's plenty of different things that you need to dive into a lot deeper here for them to get better. And if they don't find a way to do so, and again, we're not experts, but we're all seeing this in front of us. Whether people think it's the eye test or not, we know that they have struggled with runners in scoring position. The numbers tell you that as well. Again, we can't just talk about the good results, because there's bad results as well. So again, there's plenty of things that need to be discussed here, and I do want to continue that discussion, because like we were talking about with Mark Vientos, I do want to talk about Mark Vientos' defense, because I think it's a good time to discuss it, because of how Brett Beatty has been playing, of how McNeil is back and they're playing him in center field and they're playing him in left field and right field and stuff like that, of the positional maximization that they believe that he is capable of, which he obviously is not. But you know what? What is life if you can't play pretend a little bit? Either way, I want to give a little bit of a rundown as to why we can't. We can see as to why Mark Vientos has struggled so much in the defensive position, such as as third base, which he's kind of taken over since he did break out offensively. Now, with him struggling a little bit with the bat this year, he's coming around. Defensively, again, we know that's a point of emphasis a lot with David Stearns. But I think we all can agree, Mark Vientos, these are young Stonehands right here. All right, and I want to show some of the defensive metrics that he's had since he's had the full-time job. Defensive plus minus, that is a variable in defensive runs saved, which he's dead last in among third basemen over the past 2 seasons, not to mention negative 12 defensive runs saved as well. Negative 10 outs above average. He's 31st in among qualifying third basemen. Defensive run value, which is the stat on Fangraphs for positional run value, he is 29th in. Adjusted defense, that's kind of my little formula of bringing in some of these metrics of their significance towards positional value. He's 23rd in that among that. We know that the arm is strong enough because he's kind of like that Austin Riley type where he's got, the big arm, the big power, but, the overall fundamentals can be a little bit spotty, and there's room for a lot of improvement. We know that there's not the best range. Of course, range value, that's part of Ultimate Zone Rating, which is a little outdated, but whatever. Either way, you look at these defensive metrics. We know that he's not the best at third base. We know he's not great at it. We know that defensive metrics, some systems are kind of out of sync with each other. There's one defensive metric that'll tell you one thing and one will tell you another. But I think that when it comes to conclusions with just Mark Vientos, it's really easy to say that Mark Vientos is not a good defensive third baseman. And I think it's really easy to say that there has to be a conversation to be had. And I'll ask you guys this straight up. Is it time to consider moving Mark Vientos to the designated hitter and moving him off of third base? Would you guys start to consider that? Or are you just going to ride this out because maybe you think it affects Mark Vientos somehow if he's not on the field every day? So, Evan, I'll start with you. I mean, what are your thoughts on possibly moving Mark Vientos off of third base? We also have a poll in the Mets Weekly chat if you guys want to know. Let us know if you think that the Mets should take Mark Vientos off of third base, given his defensive struggles. So, Evan, what are your thoughts on that?
I never thought I'd say this. I got to give If-Man a bit of flowers. I got to give Captain Grapefruit a little bit of flowers. He's been better at third base defensively, I should say, as of lately. I mean, you with the bat, but defensively at the very least, he's been better. And for right now, if you are trying to maximize this lineup, and if Brett Baty is going, always if he's going to continue to hit, then you might as well maximize your lineup by putting him there when he is the better defensive third baseman and let Vientos DH, because we just talked about before, you're not getting anything from Starry Marte yet. He continues to clean up or fifth for whatever reason. And even when Jesse Winker was healthy, you weren't really getting much from him. So why not just go with that option and I guess go with at second base, Acuna and McNeil, some sort of combination there versus what they're doing right now where it's just kind of a mixed bag and we don't know who's DHing on a given day. We don't know who's playing third base on a given day. And originally we had the conversation on our show that we wanted them to carry 3 catchers and then send a Zokar down and just have one of Alvarez or Torrens DH just because of the way they were hitting. But now if Brett Baty's getting hit like this, there's a serious conversation to have where they should do that, especially because of the metrics that you showed with how bad he has been at third base.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to say that, like, in comparison to Mark Vientos and Brett Baty, both of them being, both drafted by the Mets, come up as third base types. Baty's been playing more second base recently. Matt, I'll swing this one over to you, but I do think that in the beginning, from what I saw from them in the major leagues, I thought that Baty was obviously the better defensive third baseman. He is, but the margin between them was too much, was not as big to me to even care about going, him because of how Mark Vientos' bat has been producing. But when it comes to Mark Vientos in these impact plays, again, I don't think either of them are great at third base. Like, personally, I just don't. Because I just feel like both of them just don't have the tools to be a fantastic third baseman. But I think Baty is serviceable enough. And if he does hit, he should earn that time where he's playing a position he's more familiar with as compared to second base, which we know he probably should not be playing. So, again, there's a mixture here that you can try. Obviously, Jeff McNeil is in this equation too for some reason because he's a second baseman who's now a center fielder. Apparently, we have to accommodate him. But again, it's just I don't understand some of the thought process and how these positions are figured out. But do you think that this is more of a benefit for Mark Vientos? Is he kind of like that pure hitter of JD Martinez that doesn't need to play the field every single day, and he can evolve into that as a young DH prospect? That's usually not something that we usually see, but I think we all know he's just not the fleet of foot, not the best hands. I mean, it's pretty clear how he's just not that good defensively at third base.
Yeah, I think for me, listen, I'm not ready to fully commit yet to moving Vientos just to a full-time DH, and part of that is just because of the overall Brett Baty thing. And listen, like, Brett Baty has been playing a lot better since he's been recalled up, and listen, I'm still not fully bought in yet, just because we've seen this where he's had a couple week stretches here and there where he's played well, and then he's dipped it back down to, the Beatty that, that we've pretty much seen for most of his major league career so far. But listen, if Brett Beatty continues to play well and he's, like you said, serviceable at third base, Carson, then there is definitely, a conversation to be had there about, putting Beatty there for now at third base and moving Vientos to a full-time DH position. And listen, the thing with Vientos, because, when he was coming up through the minor leagues, we always heard about that the bat was there and that he was just never a very good defensive third baseman. And we saw that especially, in 2022 when he came up for that short time at the end of the year, and 2023 when he came up under Buck Showalter, because we saw like, okay, maybe the bat wasn't there fully, but you saw some glimpses here and there of power. But overall, you saw that the defense was just not there. I mean, he had a terrible glove at third base for that small sample size that he had in both 22 and 23. But to my surprise last year, because we all saw that the bat was there last year, but what surprised me the most was I actually thought Vientos' glove last year at third base was at least very serviceable. Now, look, he was never at a point last year where, he had, a gold glove, platinum glove, type games where he looked like, Nolan Arenado or prime Matt Chapman per se. But like I said, he was serviceable for the most part last year at third base. You really didn't see a ton of mistakes. I mean, there was a couple of mistakes that he made in, I believe, game 2 of the NLDS against the Phillies last year, where he kind of mistaked the play on like some light bobbles in the infield. But other than that, for the most part, he was really good. But for this year, and we especially saw it, in the Miami series, in the second game of the second series of the season so far, where he had those troubles at third base. We just saw it in this series against the Pirates, where, even if the ball is not going off his glove, it's going through his glove. And even for me, I was sitting in center field for that second game. So, and originally I thought the ball just went off his glove, but then seeing on replay later that the ball, went through his glove and through his webbing, I'm like, I mean, for me personally, I've never seen that, but it's just, but there definitely is a conversation to be had. And listen, we've talked about where, the Mets have, really made a joke out of the DH position ever since it's been fully implemented into the National League. Well, now, if you move Vientos over to the DH spot and, you have him there as your full time there, now there's, that room to have Winker there and just to be a bench bat. You could then designate, a guy like Starling Marte for assignment and give him the Robinson Cano treatment, and then maybe, move Brett Beatty over to third base for a short time being, because ultimately, like, we've talked about it with David Stearns, and, we know with David Stearns' teams that he likes a really well-built defensive oil machine out there in the field. So for the time being, if Beatty continues just to be serviceable, you can work with him there. And then maybe, if Stearns finds a better defensive replacement at the trade deadline per se, then you could, have that guy at third base. Or like we said, if Beatty just continues with his hot offensive stretch, you could leave Beatty there at third base. And then, like I said, have Vientos at, the full-time DH spot. So, like I said, I'm not ready to fully commit to that aspect yet, just because I need to see more of Brett Beatty playing well. But like I said, if Beatty does play well, then sure, I'm not against moving Vientos to a full-time DH spot.
Can I just jump back in with two thoughts that I had quickly? Number one, I think the idea of it too could work in terms of helping Vientos get back on track offensively, to where he doesn't have to worry about the mental aspects of the field, just bleeding into his offensive game. And then the other thing, just because Game for War commented it, and it made me have a thought where we are having this conversation about Beatty being respectable at third. The one thing I'll say is Brett Beatty's throws over the first base are terrible in comparison to Vientos. Like Vientos makes
Vientos' arm is a lot stronger.
Vientos makes the bad plays with the glove, but I mean, at least he can make a throw, because some Brett Beatty throws over the first base, it's like you're praying that Pete Alonso's going to scoop it up.
Yeah. And Pete's really good at doing that. He's one of the best at doing that. It's the aspects of defensive type of prowess that it's not really just of it overall. It's just basically the overall skills. I think Mark Vientos has a solid arm. It's definitely accurate enough. His overall reaction time is not great. His overall range is not great. Beatty's range is a little bit better. He is a lot better to his right than Mark Vientos, but Mark Vientos had the arm where he can make up for it, We did see Mark Vientos be asked if he's okay to being shifted to designated hitter more often. This came out in The Athletic to allow Beatty more action at third base. And he said straight up, he said, absolutely. So if it's possible that, he's okay with being a guy to focus on hitting, which I think is something that is the biggest asset and you can definitely maximize it in that way. If you have both of them hitting like they are, if man is hitting, then you definitely can consider him at third base. I do think that there is a little bit more that comes to it with the concept of Brett Beatty playing every day at third base. Because of that, it doesn't seem like the Mets, the main reason as to why they seem to be keeping Mark Vientos there more as the everyday third baseman as compared to somebody like Brett Beatty. It seems like they don't trust Brett Beatty against left-handed pitching at all. And even though there's less left-handed pitching in this game, and I've talked about it before, and it's the same point of what we've said with Starling Marte. I mean, the value is completely diminished where he's good against lefties and great against lefties. Well, you face 2 lefties every month. So when you make those types of pitching changes, who's going to be off the bench for him? That'll remain to be seen for some kind of positional value, because as of right now, I think they have more outfielders than infielders right now.
Well, I mean, McNeil can do it all.
McNeil can do it all. That's right.
I mean, Acuna is on the bench.
McNeil will be coming out of the bullpen by June, right? So
I mean, Acuna could jump into the game, I guess, to play third, since they've done that, even though I don't feel comfortable about him playing third base. But it is an option at the very least if they wanted to go that route where you pinch hit every now and then. Also, I just want to address the comment that Christine put in. We're not saying that Brett Beatty is all of a sudden now a great player. Do not get it mistaken. You are talking. I
am not.
There are 3 people on this panel that are like completely anti-Beatty, but we are saying for right now, if man is going to continue to hit the way that he has, then you might as well, because what are your other choices? I mean, Jeff McNeil's not hitting. Marte's not hitting. Acuna's kind of been.
Excuse me, Jeff McNeil is hitting 400 in his last 14 plate appearances.
You're right. I
don't even know if that's correct, but
I'm so sorry. Yes, and he won a batting title at one point in his career. So
bow down to the squirrel.
He was good before people were wearing masks. So I'm sorry, but either way, the point remains that for right now, your options aren't great, both defensively and offensively. So if you're going to give leeway here to Brett Beatty, now is the time to do it, because we said going into the year, I mean, this is put up or shut up time for him, even though we've been having that conversation for years now, but like this surely is really it, right? Then why not give him a little bit of runway while you have Jesse Winker on the IL, while there's an opportunity here to let Mark Vientos DH? Why not let this be like the last go around for Brett Beatty to get playing time and just see
the last chapter?
The last chapter, because then the decision's pretty easy come the trade deadline.
Yeah, exactly. And they're going to probably, I'm hoping that they'll have a little bit more of a grasp on this situation of, how they kind of figure this out, of who plays every day, because I don't like having a different lineup every single day, because I want that more consistency. But again, when it comes to the whole thing with, accommodating Jeff McNeil the way that they are trying to put his bat in the lineup, we've talked about this before with, Jeff McNeil's bat is not as impactful to say that you want to continue to put him in the lineup. And you can give me all the stats that you want and how great he was in the second half and this and that. We all know that he's not the big impact bat that you're like, okay, well, we have to have him in the lineup. Let's put him in center field. Let's put him behind the plate if we have to. Let's shove him down our throats so much. There's so many different things with the entirety of positional, whether it is defensive versatility or this, but it also more just wraps around more with Vientos, I'd say, and then of course Beatty and him playing second base or whatever. It all really wraps around these two contracts that we know are basically sunk costs at this point. McNeil and Marte. Mark Vientos right now, if he were to DH right now, I'm fine with it because of how awful this has been with Starling Marte as the DH. So again, it is continued to be a constant hole in the lineup no matter what. We saw Acuna play a little bit of center field, like be put out in center field yesterday. Like, it's just, at some point you're gonna have to like figure something out here where you just continue where you just continue with a certain a certain defense that you're comfortable with. And even with Mark Vientos, I'm not ready to give up on him, like you said, Matt. I'm not ready to give up on him yet. With him at third base, because I know that the bat eventually it started to come around, obviously, to kind of make up for that a little bit. It's more of just of what it's more of just what Brett Beatty can continue to do. If he continues that consistency, if we get another week in this series against the Yankees, Red Sox, and Dodgers, if we get that type of consistency still, it's all about consistency with him, then we're going to be like, okay, let's move him to third base, have Vientos DH. I'm not ready for it just yet, but it's a discussion that has to be had, especially from the other side where you're like, okay, Mark Vientos, you can be the DH because, well, we don't have any alternative. Winker's hurt, and also Marte is nothing. Like, he gives you absolutely nothing.
He's a cheerleader.
Aside from the little duck snort hit that he gets at some points to reset the clock. But it's like, this is a sunk cost at this point, and you're paying $20 million for it. So I'd rather just him, he gives you more value sitting on the bench and just there, and more like, actually, he gives you the most value by DFAing him. But, apparently we're just not there yet because he's such a great clubhouse guy and such a great camaraderie. I think that at some point they're going to have to figure this out, and it's not just going to be like, okay, well, let's ride this hot hand and this hot hand and that. They're going to have to establish something, like I've said, because it goes along with the lineup being different every single day. Like, yeah, play to continue, but it's like, they're going to have to figure something out, and hopefully they do eventually.
Yeah, I mean, they're paying Marte to just be an expensive Blake Wheeler at this point. Like, that's really just what it is. He's a cheerleader.
And he's an alpha male, kind of like Trouba and Goodrow.
He's pounding on the outside of the glass.
Meet cheerleading man.
Yeah, meet cheerleader man. Meet 5, 6, 7, 8 man. Or just 5, because that's all they like to bat him these days, or 4 or whatever.
Spanish Vogie.
Yeah, Spanish Vogie. Or a Vogie. I mean, it's so odd. It's easy to overreact, obviously, with how we have seen Mark Vientos play, and we're like, okay, well, he's looking like a DH a lot when he plays defensively. But if he's okay with moving to DH and he doesn't think that that's going to mentally screw him up, then screw everything we said before the season. If he's okay with it, he's okay with it. We've seen him take a lot of rough news and lack of role news before, when they signed JD Martinez, or when they've optioned him down or benched him afterwards because, Buck Showalter, the elite Hall of Fame manager that he is, with one playoff win in 22 years, he was a genius, and he knew how to keep everybody clean and, keep everybody's jersey not dirty and make sure that these young guys don't get a lot of sunlight. But for you guys in the chat right now, 69% of you guys are saying that the Mets should move Mark Vientos off of third base. 31% of you in our chat are saying that they should not. So again, it's all really based on the opinion here. It really just all relies on Beatty, I think. It's more of just Beatty and less about Mark Vientos, because we're seeing the bat come along with Mark Vientos. Since the beginning of May, actually, Mark Vientos has actually come back to that production we were seeing last year. Obviously, still struggling with the runners in scoring position, but what else is new as throughout the entire lineup? But I'm pretty sure in May he started to get it going. Yeah, he's got a, so almost an 800 OPS in May. So he's definitely been a lot better. We're looking for a little bit more of the power. 122 weighted runs created plus in May as well. So again, it's definitely been a lot better for him with the bat. And if he can continue to improve with that offensively by being the DH, have at it. Go ahead, do it.
Swaggy V.
Yeah, Swaggy V. Yeah. Anyways.
Swaggy Vit.
Swaggy something.
Yeah. Anyways, now before we do continue, I do want to get into as most of these chats I think you guys are laughing at are coming in not through my Twitter, so I think you guys are seeing it and I'm not. I guess because some of these messages just don't come in, but hey, it's whatever. You guys
I was laughing because of the Swaggy V thing.
Yeah. Well, anyways.
We say in the group chat.
Listen, we don't have Unk here, and he usually does do the injury report, so I'm gonna have to fill in for him. Yeah, the Unk report here. But the overall updates of what we got these last few days, I just want to point it out to everybody.
I can't wait to see Figment on the screen.
Yep, you know exactly who is going to be on here. The constant celebrity. Either way, here is your 3 major injury report updates. Mets starting pitcher Sean Manaea threw off a mound for the first time in his recovery process on Monday afternoon at Citi Field, tossing 15 pitches from the full windup. The 33-year-old Southpaw's timeline to begin a rehab assignment is still undetermined, as Manaea has been sidelined since the beginning of spring training due to a right oblique strain. Mets right-handed pitcher, and like we said, injury report celebrity Paul Blackburn is scheduled to throw another rehab outing on Friday for AAA Syracuse. Mets manager Carlos Mendoza stated that it's possible that Blackburn could rejoin the big league club in the next coming days if all goes well tomorrow. The 31-year-old veteran pitcher has been on the injured list since right before opening day due to a right knee inflammation. Mets infield prospect Ronnie Mauricio has continued his rehab assignment for AA Binghamton over this past week. Mets president of baseball operations David Stearns said in his press conference yesterday that Mauricio will stay in the minors until they need him at the major league level going forward. The Mets have continued to take things slow with Mauricio, who has continued to recover from his torn ACL surgery that he underwent on his right knee back in December of 2023. And also for other guys out of the lineup, we had another a whole scare from yesterday with Juan Soto. Like we said, he's fine. He just got rest for some reason, and we were all talking about that of it possibly being a punt lineup or whatever. But again, it was seemed to be rest. It was weird to see him get that off day before an off day, which is weird. I saw something about I don't know if this was a joke or not, but Mendoza said something about Soto in the weight room. I don't know if he's weak now and he just needs a protein shake, but for some reason we're not seeing we didn't see Soto in the lineup. I think I have it bookmarked here. But we also did get an announcement that he will be playing for Team Dominican Republic in the World Baseball Classic next year in 2026. So, it was weird to see those announcements there at the same time. No update on Jose Siri, but we hope that the aura heals very, very quickly. Truro saying, I never understood. Yeah.
You're talking to the biggest Blackburn hater in the world, so believe me, I get it. I was just as pissed off about it.
Yeah, I mean, he's a free agent after this year. So again, he's going to be I don't know what his market's going to be. I don't know when he is going to pitch for this team. Like we said, he may come back, but we'll see. who he does replace. There is one strong possibility of somebody who he could replace, and I do want to actually get into that certain guy, even though I don't think it's going to be him. But either way, I want to talk a little bit about somebody who has had an under-the-radar rough season so far, and that being Jose Butto. Now, Butto has not been, I don't want to say he's not been himself. At face value, he's looked okay, but overall, it still has just been a constant struggle, a very tedious type of outing for a guy like Butto, who it seems like in main takeaways is lacking the basics. And I feel like for some reason we're coming away from a lot of things that made him so successful last year. And there has been just kind of a loss in identity within the process of that. We all know that he does have plus stuff. He can get these swings and misses. He's still in the 77th percentile in chase rate, in whiff rate. He's in the 81st percentile. He's still getting a decent amount of strikeouts. He's struggled with his command a lot, specifically with his slider a lot as well. Command of his fastball has been all over the place. The usage of his plus changeup and also the stuff for his changeup because of it has also went down. It's kind of what happens with changeups and pairs up with fastballs. And he's been all over the place with his sinker, even though he has been inducing a little bit more ground balls this year. And then overall, for what we are seeing from quality of contact, expected ERA is 4.7 as compared to his actual earned run average, which is 3.13. But it doesn't tell the whole story here because it seems like every single inherited runner that he gets seems to be coming across the plate, and that does not account for his earned run average, which is the main reason why relievers and earned run average for that is a little bit unjustifiable in that, because you always have these clean innings in front of you. Again, it doesn't look like it's been a bad season for Jose Butto, but it still has continued to be, let's just say, a journey for him to have this success this year, as compared to where it seemed like the ball was just coming out of his hand so much more effortlessly as compared to this year, where it seems like he's just completely out of sorts, maybe getting out of a few jams here and then, but it still just hasn't been the Jose Butto that we saw last year. We've seen relievers be inconsistent, nothing new. But again, it's come to a point where, like, okay, maybe he's not in this circle of trust. He's not in this this point where we can trust him with runners on. We've also seen him just struggle a lot from the stretch in general. So, Evan, I'll go to you on this. Obviously, we've actually talked about Jose Butto privately a lot. Right-handed hitters obviously destroying him, like I have here on the screen. But it just has not been Butto. It just has not been the guy who is quick working, better sequence. It's not what we are accustomed to from someone who seems to just to have this effortless motion and continue out of the pen to give you multiple innings. It just seems like it's been a challenge for him for most of the outings that he's had this year.
Yeah, it's a lot of the comments are saying my first thought with Jose Butto, that he can't come in with runners on base, and it ended up working out in this series when he did. But when Peterson walked the batter and Jose Butto was coming in, I was like, if the hook is so quick on a guy like Peterson, then one, why is he even starting that inning? Two, why are you bringing Jose Butto, who has notoriously been bad with guys on base this year? And it is just infuriating. I don't know what you even chalk it up to anymore, because last year, down the stretch when he struggled, I was willing to chalk it up to the fact that he was probably overworked, because we saw him get 2 innings and then it was just like one day off, and then here you go, 2 innings again. Now he's getting multiple days off. Now he's still going 2 innings, but you're just not seeing the same effectiveness. And I agree with what Turo's saying as well, that he's too good, the DFA, but not good enough for high leverage. That's why, in my opinion, I think you're going to see him on this roster until the trade deadline, where you can maybe do some sort of a reliever
He's
swap.
out of minor league options, so
Yeah,
it's
that's the problem here. But I could see them holding on till the deadline and then come the deadline doing some sort of reliever swap where maybe a team wants to turn Butto back into a starting pitcher, or maybe they view him as a valuable reliever, a young guy with control, and the Mets could get a higher leverage arm that they desperately need to add to the pen since AJ Minter has gone down, which that's really the biggest problem is that like once guys start going down, like we saw with Minter and when Stanek was ineffective, which thankfully he's been more effective lately, but now Reed Garrett's starting to be a little more ineffective. It puts a little pressure on Butto when he does come in, because right now, would you rather go to Jose Butto or Genesis Cabrera? Right now, I would say Butto, but it's not by a good margin.
yeah.
So it's just like with the injuries coming in and him having to be relied upon more, it's just not making things better right now. So I don't know what the solution is, to be honest with you. Maybe it's a pitch sequencing thing that could be adjusted. But overall, I mean, it just does not look like at all what we saw from last year, especially in August, where it's just like him and Nunez were just like the two guys to go to every single time it was a close game. Now, you don't trust them with the bases empty, let alone with guys on base.
Yeah. It's definitely been a inconsistent road for Butto, and like we've said, if you're just looking about it for earned run average, it just doesn't tell the full story because he just has not been good from the stretch at all when he's inheriting runners or putting runners on. Obviously, he's always had that control issue, and main reason as to why he's more popular role is in the pen as opposed to being a starter. But Matt, I'll go to you on this. Another aspect that I think has also been on notice. We've had quite a few mental mistakes from Jose Butto where he's just he's not in, like he's not using his head. And I feel like that's probably getting to him, especially when you keep bringing him in to these situations where he has runners on base. It just, the leverage level, I think it's starting to get to him, and then also it's showing it on the field. It really is, after that whole thing in Minnesota where he's arguing the call while the play is still going on, the disengagement violation that he had. I'm pretty sure he had a balk as well, like a pure balk earlier on this year. I don't know, maybe that was last year, I don't know, but he's had quite a few mental mistakes as to where he's just not locking in. Like his focus is all over the place, and it's starting to hurt the quality of his pitches and quality of his outings.
No, I 100% agree, and he's been very underwhelming for me this series, not just this series, but this season in general. And you really start to see a slip from Butto, because he was very good like midway through last year. He was very effective in June, July, and even May for the short time that he was even starting games last year. But it really felt like that once the calendar last year switched to August, you really start to see Butto fall off a cliff. And I think part of that was because he was a bit overworked. And I mean, even then when we got to the playoffs, he was very unreliable, because I mean, he was in there for game 2 when, Jackson Chourio ends up hitting the home run to turn that game around and giving the Brewers the win. And then he comes in game 3 in relief, and he gives up the back-to-back homers to Jake Bauers and Sal Frelick. And thankfully, if it wasn't for the White Bear and Pete Alonso coming in and bailing us out, the Mets are out last year in the wild card, and they don't make that deep run. So but then, yeah, I mean, this year he's been terrible. I haven't loved like his breaking stuff per se. I think his slider has arguably been his worst pitch this year. There's been plenty of times where, again, he's coming with runners on base and he's hanging sliders. He hasn't really gotten his sinker. His sinker hasn't been really effective. His changeup's been hit hard a lot so far. I mean, his fastball has been solid, but overall, and for me, the point where I really lost it with Butto this year was the third game in the National Series, where he's up 7-1. And listen, I get he hasn't been great with runners with runners on base in general, but even still, you're coming into a game where you're up 7-1 or 7-2 at that point. I get that there's runners on base, but still, the Nationals lineup, while they're young and they have upside and high potential, that's not a great lineup. And again, you let that game get out of hand, and I get it. Like he exits that game, and the Mets are still up 7-6. But again, you come in and you give up 4 runs like that, and you swing all the momentum towards Washington. It's just like he's not been good. And then, as you said, with the mental aspects, with the disengagement violation that we saw in this Pittsburgh series, with the mental mistake that we saw in Minnesota, where he clearly gets the bag out at first base, and the umpire, it was a bad call by the umpire. He should have been ruled it out.
Yeah.
But still, you can't go to the umpire and start complaining, especially when there's a guy rounding third base and ends up scoring a run on that play. That's just an inexcusable play. And then, as you mentioned, with the other balk that he had in the season so far, Butto for me is just not been good. And as you guys mentioned, the fact that he doesn't have any more minor league options, that kind of hurts the Mets, because like the other comment, I forgot who brought it up, but like Butto's not good enough to be DFA'd, but he's also not bad enough to where, you can't use him in spots. So I agree. It's like what Evan said. Butto will probably be in this rotation up until the trade
So you're
deadline.
saying Drew Smith territory is what you're saying?
He's getting there.
Honestly.
He's getting I'm just maybe Jose Butto. I don't think he can attract the supermodels that Drew Smith does.
No,
but
absolutely not.
I think it's like what Evan said. I think he'll be in this bullpen up until the trade deadline, and then possibly we could see something like a reliever for reliever swap. And again, this is something like we've seen the talk throughout baseball, and I get it's kind of like a thing that's been said always, where with relievers you never know. From 1 year they could be really good, and then the next year they're just not good and inconsistent. And unfortunately, I think this is just something that we're starting to see come true with a guy like Butto.
Yeah, I mean, Arson, you were the one that said it, I'm pretty sure, where it's just like you have your 10% of relievers that are consistently good, and then the other 90% is a crapshoot. And the one thing I want to add is, I don't know if there's a correlation, but I'm starting to wonder if there is, to the fact that Butto was built up last year to be a starting pitcher and was built up to have heavy workload, to where, the transition to the bullpen was easier, where now he's coming into this transitioning as a full-time reliever, and he's going through the motions and the growing pains of not ramping up as much as he is usually accustomed to. Meanwhile, they're throwing him out there to have like 30, 40 pitch outings every now and then.
Yeah, it's very possible that there's like a different like disengagement from rhythm with him. I think that it's just been very erratic for him, and I don't say that as like he's just been walking everyone. I say that just because it's been very, very inconsistent, because it seems like he's been overthrowing a lot, and when he's not overthrowing, he's just constantly missing spots. And when you continue to do that, you're going to get into these situations where it's a very, very tight corner where you're going to have to make pitches. You're going to have to make pitches and find a way to put guys away. But we know that he is capable of it. Like I said, he's in the 80th percentile in chases. There's swing and miss stuff still here. But again, when you look at some of the put away numbers, they've regressed a little bit from last year, especially when you're talking about it from two-strike approach. We're seeing a lot of two strikes in the zone from him. We are seeing a lot of hard contact that should not be there from a certain sequencing because of, a lot of the swing and miss here. I think that, yes, the slider has been very inconsistent, but the problem that I really show here with this is not just because of the usage of the slider, but how good we know the slider can be. And it seems like he's just not finding that medium with it, because he still has a 44.3% whiff rate on his slider. Like, he still has a 33% whiff rate on his fastball, but he's still just not mixing things in. It seems like nobody's up there guessing against him. He's become very predictable, especially against right-handed hitters, which it seems like was a lot easier for him last year. It just seems like the tools are still there. It's just we're not seeing a Jose Butto that can locate pitches properly in order to just make pitches in general. I think that this has just been something that is all mental with him. And like we've said, the overall consistency of a reliever, it's possible. But, these guys go through rough stretches, but I think that Butto is just all year. He's kind of just been mailing it in a lot. It really seems like he's just not there mentally. And as for a reliever that needs to be in these tight situations, it's a little bit of a concern. And he's probably going to be brought down the pecking order a little bit lower if this continues to happen. And hopefully we get a little bit more of that consistency where he can attack the zone, get those chases, and just basically overall timely pitching. That's what we need from him. And he needs to focus in on, a lot more situations of, oh, do I have a disengagement left? Is there a runner at third? Checking the back runner. Like those types of things, those need to be applied as well. And I feel like that's just getting to him a lot. And he's being put into these situations where he needs to be good in those situations. And he just has not been able to execute that. So he needs to get it going. The overthrowing, the underthrowing, the missing spots, the untimely walks, just the overall struggles from the stretch. It's been rough, definitely. Darren Rivera is saying, do you think he should throw his changeup against righties like Darling keeps mentioning? No, Ron Darling's actually been pretty spot on with Butto of talking about him overthrowing a lot of pitches. But yeah, he's thrown the changeup more to right-handed batters, but the usage overall has just been low. It really has been. And to be honest, if he's going to rely on this upstairs fastball stuff, he's going to have to put in the changeup as the second or third most used pitch. This is now his fourth most used pitch with his sinker, which he's been getting a decent amount of ground balls with. But with how these pitches interact with this sequencing, he's going to have to, figure something out as to where he's not predictable, because it seems like everyone is sitting fastball or everyone is sitting slider on him, and he's making those mistakes eventually. He's just getting that hard contact against him. It's rough to watch because of these certain situations he's being put in.
It's just weird how much, because I'm looking at it right now, how much more he's forcing the slider usage, because last year he threw his four seam 31% of the time, his sinker 23, changeup 22, the slider 13, and in comparison to this year, 29 for both the four seam and the slider, 19 for the sinker, 15 for the changeup. Why change what was working for you last year? Why start to go slider heavy when your changeup and sinker were effective last year? To me, that makes
this is possible
no
too.
sense.
That Butto maybe hasn't recovered from giving up those 2 home runs in the playoffs against the Brewers or whatever. Maybe that's what spooked him completely. But what's the alternative here? I feel like right now the alternative that we are seeing is just an incomplete pitcher, which became more of a complete pitcher as compared to what he was a few years before last year, where he was really, really good. He's added a lot to his repertoire, and it seems like we're seeing a Jose Butto of just odd pitch usage, not being able to throw strikes, and just missing spots constantly and overthrowing. It's just a bunch of things that you don't want to do. That is a house of cards situation for relief pitchers in these certain situations.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys want to add? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if anything, I'd like to see him use maybe the sweeper more than the slider, if anything. Which,
yeah,
I know that the sweeper doesn't.
At least to right-handed hitters, yeah.
Yeah, just because I feel like with more of the movement there, it will help out compared to throwing the slider. But either way, I mean, again, I think that sequencing and mental is the biggest thing. I just don't understand specifically why he's being so reliant on the slider compared to last year. That to me makes no sense, especially when that's the pitch it feels like he's getting beat on the most.
Yeah. It seems like four-seam sinker changeup seemed to be the better specialty for him, inducing ground balls. Obviously, he's more of a fly ball pitcher. We know that he is. But, again, if he misses a spot, it's going to go over the fence because of how vulnerable a lot of his stuff is. But he was able to get away with it last year. Like I've talked about, with overall vertical approach angle. He has a really good vertical approach angle on his fastball. But again, things are going to start to get predictable if you have a certain usage or a certain sequencing that is just going to be very, very volatile to hitters or to right-handed hitters, like we have seen mainly from a right-handed pitcher such as Butto. So if there's anything else you guys want to add on Butto here, because it's been inconsistent from him. It just hasn't been what we expected from a guy who we know that can go multiple innings. So he's definitely an important guy to get the bridge to the back end of this bullpen, which has been really good.
The last thing I'll add is that it also is very bizarre, just again looking at Savant, the difference in the arm angle as well. Just
yeah,
something to keep an eye out on that for, just because it's been a pretty significant difference compared to what it was last year.
Yeah, he's definitely raised the arm angle, and that could be from some pitch tipping. I don't know what it seems like from each pitch, but again, that's an analysis for another day. It probably is that the fact that he's overthrowing. I mean, it's very, very possible. Just running down the arsenal in general, maybe it has nothing to do with the pitch usage, and it's just he's just not executing whatsoever. Obviously, we already have that situation that goes on with Tyler McGill all the time of execution. But, it seems like we've just seemed to plot off course a little bit with Jose Butto. And if it doesn't start to pick up, we're going to have another discussion to have about him where it's just been very odd situation for this guy, just coming in every single time with, high leverage, low leverage, or whatever. But either way, you guys know the drill by now. Of course, we got to recap this series the best way that we know how with a segment that everybody loves called Studs and Duds. One player that was good in this series we want to give flowers to, one that was not, and we want to completely throw under the bus. Evan, I'll start with you. If you know how to do this one, who do you got as a stud for this series?
Honestly, it's really tough to pick. I was tempted to maybe go with Brandon Nimmo just because he had a couple nice plays in the outfield, had a couple of good at-bats, but I'm going to go with Kodai Senga. I just really love the way that he was able to work in and out of trouble throughout his outing. Wish he didn't get in as much trouble, but either way, just the way that he was able to do that gave a good amount of volume, all things considered, with the pitch limit that we're accustomed to, went up to 100 pitches, racking up 7 strikeouts. I was very happy with the start that they got from Senga, and now that it looks like maybe the pitch restrictions are lifted off of him, maybe we're going to start to see him be able to go 7 innings in an outing, which the thought of that is very exciting considering how much, one, this bullpen needs pressure off of them, and 2, how desperate this starting pitching staff just is for volume in general. So that was very encouraging to see that Mendoza, especially, and as critical as I've been, I'll give Mendoza his flowers on this thing. I was very happy to see him give the leash to Senga and go out there, check his temperature, and let him stay in that game there. So I was very happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great season so far for Senga, and we've definitely needed it from this rotation, of course, for him to be the frontline guy, and it's great to have him healthy on the mound again. Matt, I'll go to you with your stud for this series.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of guys to pick from, but mine is going to be Brandon Nimmo. I really liked Nimmo's game throughout this series. Obviously, like Evan mentioned, he made the 2 really nice catches in both Game 1 and Game 2 on both Joey Bart at the left field wall. So obviously, we're not going to be seeing Joey Bart, wearing Brandon Nimmo jerseys anytime soon. But he also had a hit in each of the 3 games of the series. Obviously, had the big RBI hit in Game 2 of the series where he drove in Juan Soto on that really nice hit into the left field gap to get to second base. So, and also I got to give Nimmo credit because he's really turned it around this year so far. His bat has been a lot better, within the last month, and even his defense too. Listen, I get we've been really frustrated with Nimmo and his offense so far, and at least with his offensive consistency throughout this year. But the one thing I think we really can't hate on, and I know Nimmo's gotten a lot of hate for his defense over the last couple of years, especially for the years that he's played in center field. But Nimmo's defense in left field this year has been really good so far. So I'll give Brandon Nimmo as my stud for this series.
Muted.
Yeah, I think collectively as a bullpen unit with this team, I mean, I think the bullpen did a really good job, obviously, with how close these games have been. I do want to give this one to Genesis Cabrera because, again, we still have these last few outings that we have seen from him. He's been solid. He's been working a lot quicker. But, again, giving the bullpen an even extra more day of rest, getting those 2 innings from him. You can also give it to somebody like Dednel Nunez, who has kind of bounced back these last few outings as well. And also give him a little bit more of the Pookie sticker as well, for the way that he's come back in here. But, hopefully he can get going as well. But, we also have some other performances that were not so great. So we'll get to the dud part of this series. Evan, I'll swing it right back to you. A dud of this series that you want to completely throw under the bus and spit on.
I mean, how do you pick one? I was tempted to pick one of the catchers maybe, but I got to go, unfortunately, with the hoopist and Tyrone Taylor. He did not have a good series, just giving you nothing at the plate. And the fact that he was hitting 7th in that third game as well, it's just such a big problem right now that you're getting nothing at all from the center field spot outside of the occasional clutch hit every now and then from Tyrone Taylor. And, it hurts my heart to do it. I'm a Tyrone Taylor guy, but I got to be honest here, unfortunately, and say that I was not impressed with the lack of production that they got from him this series.
I mean, you should see me when I have to put Diaz in the dud category. You hear my heart break. You hear it. Like, you actually do hear it. Matt?
This one hurts, and I know a lot of people are not going to like this pick, but it's the captain, Francisco Lindor. I didn't love Lindor's series in the series personally. Yeah. I thought, listen, the first game in terms of the bat, I thought he had a good first game. He went 3 for 5. Obviously started off the bottom of the ninth with that single up the middle. But let's be honest, the Mets don't have to go to that bottom of the ninth if Lindor makes that easy ground ball play hit to him to turn the double play. And that's just, listen, I love Lindor. I hate to kill him, but that's a simple ground ball double play that you have to make. I'm sorry, it's right to you. It's at the glove. Listen, if I'm going to kill Jeff McNeil for that ground ball that he should have kept in the infield in Washington, I have to kill Francisco Lindor for that play. And to be honest, and Evans brought this up in our group chat, Lindor has made a lot of shaky plays in the field so far, which are uncharacteristic of him. Now, listen, does Lindor suck defensively? No. Lindor still has a gold glove caliber glove at shortstop, but we can be honest and hold him accountable when he makes those bad mistakes. And even the one thing I love about Lindor, even when he does make those mistakes, he holds himself accountable and he says, I let the team down and I have to be better. Unlike some certain other Ranger players who wear letters for that team, but we won't get into that. And then obviously for the rest of the series, I thought he had a terrible game in the second game of the series against Mitch Keller. He went 0 for 3.
Yes.
And then in that final game, he goes 0 for 3 as well and only draws 1 walk in the finale of that game. So it hurts me to say it, and listen, Lindor is obviously not going to be in this type of dud conversation for a lot of the series that we play. But listen, when we have to call it out and be honest, we are going to, and I don't like it. But for me, Lindor was the dud for me.
Yeah, I mean, again, Mitch Keller, brutal. We had two crucial errors from him, I'm pretty sure, in this series. We've seen him kind of coast defensively this year. I know he's going to figure out this is Francisco Lindor's bread and butter. He's one of the best defenders of this generation. I'm not going to panic about it, but it definitely cost this team and put them in a predicament that was really rough. I have to put Jose Azocar in here, and it's not just because of swinging first pitch with the bases loaded. Obviously, Carlos Mendoza leaving him in with the bases loaded was definitely not the best decision, but also he got picked off of first base whenever it seemed like they had any momentum or any guy for the top of the order. Obviously, with Lindor not playing as well, but, Azocar just, it's coming towards the point where you're like, okay, why is this guy here? Why is he still here? Like, we're kind of like, okay, he's a nice little player to have there once every 10 days, but it's like a spot on the bench where you're like, okay, yes, Siri's not here or whatever, but with a guy in the minors like Drew Gilbert there and Tyrone Taylor not being known as an everyday player throughout his entire career, it's like, okay, well, maybe we give this a call here because Azocar, we all know, is not somebody we expected to be a big contributor for this team. And it's not me just saying call up Gilbert or whatever, but I'm getting really, really close where I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's see what this kid's got, because who knows what's going to happen with Jose Siri. Tyrone Taylor's not an everyday player, even though he's a good player that can be in there in the margins. But, I think when it comes to the outfield, they got to start making a little bit of these decisions because of how it's locked in the corners with Nimmo and Soto, because they're not going to go anywhere. They're going to play every day, or they won't because Soto ended up sitting. So I guess they're part-time players too.
I have 2 things to say about that whole situation with center field. One is a theory that I really just wonder if they're not calling up Gilbert just because they want him to just kill it in AAA to where they could trade him at the deadline. And,
Maybe.
if he doesn't thrive in the major leagues, then you lose a potential trade piece there. That's just more of a theory. I have no way of knowing that. Second thing, though, is Carson, you're forgetting that Jeff McNeil could play center field. So we're covered there. So no need to worry.
He's a natural. He's a natural at that position. It's just, the constant accommodation for that guy. It's just unbelievable. But either way, out of all the talking past 2 hours that we're already out here, but we'll keep it going to one last segment here, and that of course is what is coming up, which I think is very highly anticipated after the Mets took their right fielder last year, and that being the Mets versus Yankees series, which will be starting tomorrow.
It's because we took Clay Holmes from them, actually. And
we took Clay Holmes from them. We took Harrison Bader from them too. Joely Rodriguez. We fleeced him in that, right? The great Billy Epler. So again, off to the Bronx we go. We already know what the main storyline is. Juan Soto. But as for the pitching side, let's get into these pitching probables. Preview the best we can. Obviously, in game one, for the turns through the rotation, as the Mets have been relatively healthy and they've continued this path. But as for Tyler McGill, he will get game one, looking to plot a better path in May after two subpar outings. He will face left-hander Carlos Rodon. First pitch will be at 7:05 Eastern Time on Pix 11, or Pix for some TV stations. Game two will go to Griffin Canning, as he will look to continue his fantastic start to 2025, facing right-hander Clark Schmidt. First pitch will be at 1:05 on SNY. And game three, it will be the battle of the Southpaws. David Peterson gets the series finale. He will face off against early AL Cy Young candidate Max Fried. First pitch is at 7:10 Eastern Time for Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN, which we all love listening to that broadcast for all of their fantastic insight. I say that in the most sarcastic way possible because it's not great. Anyways, which I think they're getting rid of it after this year, I think. Yeah. I guess some predictions going into this series and some other things to look out for. We know that Juan Soto is the main storyline as of right now because, he played for the Yankees last year. If you can't tell. But Matt, I'll go to you from some things that you're looking at for this series. Obviously, matchup wise with the Yankees, this is a lot better of a team than the Pirates. So off to the Bronx we go. Any thoughts you have going into this series?
I mean, the big thing is, we know that this Yankee lineup can mash because they do have a deep lineup, and I know that they lost Juan Soto to us in free agency, but to be honest, they did do a good job in terms of actually replacing him, because I know Cody Bellinger hasn't been great in this so far. I think he has like a 660 OPS so far, but we know he has a dangerous bat, especially with that short porch out in the right field. Aaron Judge is on fire. He has like a 1300 OPS or a 1200 OPS with 15 home runs so far. Yeah. Trent Grisham, who's come out of nowhere and has 12 home runs so far this year. I have no idea how he has been doing that, but whatever, it is what it is. Paul Goldschmidt's been a sneaky under the radar signing for them. He has a 901 OPS so far, and Ben Rice, the guy who took Juan Soto's number 22, has a 900 OPS so far. So he's been pretty good. Yeah. So obviously you have to watch out and contain that lineup, and then obviously for the Mets, like I said, they have to hit with runners in scoring position because the Yankees are going to have a deadly offense, and also the pitching has to be good as well. Obviously, we'll see how Tyler McGill fares in that ballpark. And we know McGill, whenever the calendar flips to May, McGill always seems to just go back to being a bad pitcher. But listen, he's had two subpar performances so far in May, like you said, Carson, but hopefully, he could maybe turn around here and pitch a very solid game in the Yankee Stadium. Obviously, like you said, Griffin Canning, he's been pitching well. So hopefully he can continue it. And then obviously, results, man, in the finale with the short porch. Let's see if he could find a way to get some good results in this series against a very good Yankee lineup.
Yeah, we'll see how they fare well. Obviously, Max Fried in that finale, who's been great. We are very familiar with Max Fried for his time in Atlanta, but it's pretty much the same when you have results man going up against him in Game 3. Evan, I'll flip it over to you. What are you looking at going into this Yankees series, going into the Bronx?
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't say what we did the last time we were on the show previewing a series, which what we did with the White Sox. But with the Yankees standpoint, I would like it if they could do a similar thing that they did last year and pitch around Judge as much as possible. That'd be great. I know that their lineup is deeper this year, but still, just don't give that chance a hit. Trent Grisham, the start that he's off to scares the ever-living piss out of me because I have trauma from that wild card game against the Padres where Trent Grisham teed off Max Scherzer. But they're going to have to find a way. Like, again, this is what we talk about. This is where you're battle tested, and the offense has to step up here. Hit in that Little League ballpark if you're not able to here. I don't know when you're going to be able to, or if you're going to be able to at all. I will be on the optimistic side since apparently I'm so negative all the time. I'll say they take 2 out of 3. Unfortunately, I think they lose the ace off in game number 3. I know that people think that with the results man on the mound, it's inevitable that they'll win. Unfortunately, I got to say that's the game that they drop. But yeah, I mean, with the way that this pitching has been, hopefully it will be enough to neutralize the Yankees lineup, considering the Jake Diekmans of the world was good enough last year. And hopefully this offense could step up for once. I'm begging you to step up for once. And hopefully Juan Soto doesn't get too many beer cans thrown at him.
Yeah, that would be nice. We all know that the big storyline obviously is with Soto, of course. We know that there is still a good amount of swing and miss in that Yankees lineup. We're going to have to get the best swing and miss stuff from Tyler McGill in order for him to do that, because when the ball gets put in play, aside from somebody like David Peterson, the defense has been definitely suspect. And you don't want to give those extra chances to the Yankees against a deep lineup. I don't want them to be in a lot of positions where they have to pitch to Aaron Judge, because we know that Aaron Judge is the biggest engine for that offense. Obviously, he's their best player, arguably the best player in all of baseball when it's the regular season. But, sorry, whoops. I guess, listen, it's Mets versus Yankees. Trash talk is all on deck. But again, it's more of those things where I think they just need to get the timely hitting that they have not been able to get, because it's going to come back to bite them, because 3 runs against this Yankees team is not going to get it done unless you play it inning to inning like they have this year. But I don't trust that this pitching is just going to constantly ride 1-run ball throughout this entire of this series. You're going to get beat by this Yankees team that we know if you make a mistake, they're going to make you pay. But again, this is definitely a true test for this pitching staff, which is, this is a high slugging team. They did well against the Cubs for the pitching side. And then also you have, Rodon and Max Fried, which kind of just sounds like we're going to see a lot of Starling Marte, but it's whatever. I think, they're going to have to figure it out. And obviously this is a statement, not just because of whether you like the Yankees or not, but this is definitely a statement for Juan Soto as well. We know with the whole, storyline with him, but also it's just, they got to continue. And hopefully this ballpark, Yankee Stadium, that seems to have some dimensions that favor left-handed bats. We're looking to you. Francisco Lindor, we've seen him do well against the Yankees. Juan Soto, he played here last year. And also Pete Alonso, I think, has done well against the Yankees too. Jeff McNeil has a good career against the Yankees, I'm pretty sure.
He does against everyone, though, if I
does.
remember correctly.
Yeah, he's basically Tony Gwynn. I mean, Tony Gwynn just has hits against everyone. So it's Tony Gwynn minus the talent and legacy and overall influence. I mean, I guess overall guess, Evan, you gave your guess. Matt, I'll go to you on this, but I'll say 2 out of 3. I think there is a way that they could sweep this series.
You're so
but a lot is
negative.
gonna
They're
have to go
going to
right.
sweep.
They are going to sweep, and they're going to score more runs than the other team, and we're all going to be happy. Matt, do you have a prediction for this? Would you say 2 out of 3, 1 out of 3? Or are they going to get swept?
No, I won't be that negative, but for me, I think they'll take 2 out of 3. And I think for me, the key to this series and in terms of winning the series, I think you have to take advantage of the pitching matchups in both game 1 and game 2 against Carlos Rodon, who, we've seen in his short time so far in New York as a Yankee. Carlos Rodon, he's a good pitcher when he's on, but then we've also seen stretches where he looks really bad when he doesn't have his best stuff. So, this team has to take advantage of Carlos Rodon and his inconsistency issues. And then a guy like Clark Schmidt. I like Clark Schmidt, but he hasn't been great this year. He has a 4.73 ERA so far. And really, I would be very comfortable if they take the first 2 games of the series, just because I do not trust results man David Peterson in that ballpark against that type of lineup. I apologize to any David Peterson fans, but you all know it's true. It is what it is. So I say they take 2 out of 3. They'll win the first 2 and then lose that third game when Max Fried is on the mound against Peterson.
Wow, some fighting words there.
Throw tomatoes at Matt for that one.
Yeah, that was awful. Anyways, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Obviously, thank you to Evan and Matt from Mets Central for joining the show today. Obviously, if you guys want to go check out their show, which they usually do following every series, kind of like ours as well, the links are all in the description for those of you watching on Mets Central. Of course, I run out of voice towards the end here. For those of you watching on Twitter, make sure to head over to all the YouTube channels, hit the like on the stream if you have not already on your way out, subscribe. Of course, we go live after every single series here on Mets Weekly. To recap during the regular season, the conversation. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, which mainly features the Mets Frankly post-game, which is my co-host Frank, his post-game thoughts instantly after every game. Make sure to follow all of us individually as well. Links are in the description. And of course, going into the Bronx, which it should be quite the atmosphere. Of course, the trash talk is fantastic between Mets and Yankees fans. The atmosphere is awesome. But let's try and get it done. Let's try to keep it going, because I think recently the Mets have done fairly well. They've held their own against the Yankees, who apparently are the big brother to the Mets. So maybe they can turn it around here. And hopefully Juan Soto can be somebody who's featured in that. That would be pretty cool. But either way, we will see you guys next time. Let's go Mets. Once again, thank you to Matt and Evan for joining us today. And we will see you guys next time.